First, we're going to start with Melinda Stout, who's going to be talking about kinship.
Well, thank you guys for having us. I'm Melinda Stout. I'm the 4Kids supervisor for the Kinship team. And then my co-supervisor who couldn't be here today, LaToya Smith, she covers the other part of Region 4. So Kinship, we work with families that have placement of children in care that are either a relative or fictive kin, which having some sort of a relationship with the child. They don't necessarily have to be a relative. So if the child is placed in a kinship home, we assign a kinship worker to go out and work with that family. So our policy is that within 48 hours of placement, that referral is sent in for kinship. During that time, there are certain things we request to be sent to us in order to assign the worker. And we work with investigation and permanency and FBSS if they're doing a removal. And so that whichever worker is assigned would send the referral to us. We also request that they send a kinship home study referral, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So we do work with kinship families out of state as long as the legal region is here in Region 4. So if you have a family out of Smith County, but their relative lives in Kentucky, they can still assign a kinship worker to work with that family. We, of course, don't travel to Kentucky, but we do monthly phone calls and we're available by phone, email, and text as much as they need. And that family could potentially qualify for kinship funds. If the family has a legal region here, like say the legal region is Region 4 and they're in another region in Texas, the kinship referral is sent to that county or that region where the home is physically located. So home studies, so not everybody qualifies for kinship funds. We do have people who go out and tell our families, like, you're going to get funds and you're going to get them from the day that child is placed with you. Please don't say that because it's not accurate. There are certain qualifications they do have to meet. So they do have to have an approved home study. And that is the full home study, not the prelim done by investigation. And then they also cannot make more than 300% of the federal poverty limit, which is a pretty high number and takes into account how many kids are in the home. We have a program and charts that determine the income level, but that's set by the state of Texas. We have no control over whether or not they qualify. They have to meet those specific qualifications.
What's the home study look like for those families?
So basically, it's an overall picture of the family. They ask about their childhood, their relationships, who all lives in the home, background checks, just basically an overall picture for safety. They also address the home. If there's a swimming pool, does it have, what kind of bedroom space and the cleanliness, which we all have different ideas of clean. We're not going in there with white gloves, but they do assess all those factors. They put that into a study and it goes to our regional managers within Permanency to assess the study. So, and those are contracted. They're done by a separate agency that completes the study. So we do go out, we provide a kinship handbook, which if any of you guys would like a copy of that, we can email it to you. And it breaks down everything related to kinship, what to expect, funding, assistance, and what our program is. And we, as kinship workers, so once we get a referral, we have to contact the family within 48 hours. Our worker will do that. At that point, they're going to ask them about daycare, what resources they need, and really try to connect with that family in the initial phone call. Within the first 15 days, they go out and see that family face-to-face in the home. At that point, they're going to visit with them face-to-face for the first 6 months, and then they visit face-to-face quarterly. They can visit more if they need them, but they will at least be in the home every quarter. And then they have phone calls with that family in between if they're not doing a home visit that month. They are the voice of the kinship caregiver, so they attend PCs and court hearings. I will say we assign by where the home is located. And so they may have several legal regions, so the kinship worker can't always be present at every hearing because some hearings in different counties overlap. But they do try to be there as much as they can, and the caregiver can always request help, and that they can make them a priority if needed. Well, from our initial visit, we start talking about licensing. That's one of our jobs, to connect them with child placement agencies. So we explain about licensing, the subsidy, the benefits, and what qualifies and what doesn't. And so that's one of their primary jobs. And they're going to continue to talk to that family about licensing at every home visit and the benefits of that for them. They also communicate with Permanency each month. Like if we go out and we have a concern, we're going to relay that to Permanency. We're all one big team. And then we also seek out resources. Our kinship team, we have amazing staff that go out. We've been able to get resources within Smith County, especially through the Fostering Collective, Methodist Children's Home. You guys have several great organizations that have helped to pay electric bills. They've supplied window units to a family with no air conditioning. So we've been able to do some amazing things coordinating with our agencies. They also help with licensing. They help with paperwork in the licensing process. I've had workers that have gone out and cleaned up clutter inside and outside the home with caregivers to help them qualify for the licensing process. And then they also help them with training. And so as far as kinship payments are limited. From the time they get their first payment, if they qualify, they only qualify for 12 payments. So that's $23.45 a day per child. And that does follow the child. So if Sally was removed and placed with her aunt, and in 6 months she moves to her grandma, those funds follow Sally. So grandma only qualifies for 6 payments. For kids, our policy is that if they're not actively working toward licensing, there are a total of 6 extension payments possible for a family, but they have to actively be working toward licensing to qualify for that. And that's another reason we start talking about licensing from day one, because whereas our funds are limited, licensing funds can follow them through the course of the case, even if the child goes home. That's, they'll have that fund available, and it's double what the kinship funds are. So even though licensing has a lot of tasks and a lot of expectations, there's a greater financial benefit for the family, and it sets them up if that case, we all hope the kids go home, but in the event they don't, it prepares the family to receive subsidy and funds should they stay with them long term. So we do close kinship homes. So if a child is removed from the kinship home, the kinship worker is going to go away. If a caregiver is licensed through a child placement agency, kinship will close our home. So it's kind of like we have 2 pots of money, and ours goes away when theirs starts. And then their child placement agency will be the support system for that family from that point forward. If a family takes permanent managing conservatorship and they close a case, we close our case. If an adoption is consummated, we close our case. If a child ages out of care or a monitored return is granted, then the kinship worker would no longer work with the family. We also have what's called post-PMC payments. So if a family takes permanent managing conservatorship without getting licensed, without qualifying for the Fostering Connections program, they can qualify for up to 3 years of payments. That is $500 per child and paid out 1 year from the date they accept PMC. In order to qualify for that, they had to have qualified for kinship funds. So if they were over income, if their home study was denied, they're not going to qualify for post-PMC either. And then we track that and coordinate with 4Kids to send out those payments to the families once they accepted PMC. And that is all.
Over intake. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Melinda. Thank you. I learned a lot of really great information from you.
So my name is Emily Watson. I am one of the intake managers. My counterpart, Chandra Newell, also goes by Sunny, is not with us here today. And then, of course, our lovely director, Melissa Bennett, is here. Melissa, if you could stand up, tell us 3 truths and a lie. Come on. I'm just kidding. Anyway, okay. So I wanted to take a second to kind of go over our team with you all, because this is really where the magic happens. But as I said, I am one of the intake managers, and then Chandra, Sunny, is my other. Each of us both have intake supervisors who help us with the day-to-day. They also carry a caseload, but they don't work emergency removals. And then each of those people underneath us, those 4, are our intake specialists. So Sunny and I take turns managing the mailbox on a bi-weekly basis. So naturally, it's not my mailbox week this week. So I'm here with you all today having a great time. But then, of course, next week I'll be managing the mailbox. And what that looks like is I am watching it for emergencies coming in, non-emergencies, general questions, making sure everybody has all the information that they need, and then just kind of doing that. Okay, so I wanted to kind of go over emergency and non-emergency placement requests with y'all. I know y'all are probably familiar, our first kind of emergency through DFPS, that's the emergency that comes through where we have that 4-hour time frame. An investigation has been completed, and they're either being maybe removed for the first time, or maybe their case is closed and they're being removed again. But this is coming through DFPS. The other kind of emergencies that we have come through as 24-hour discharges, kinship breakdowns, shelter discharge, failed monitored returns. I did want to mention for 24-hour discharges, those are reserved for youth who are either hospitalized or in jail. But what I will say about the hospital discharges is that Sunny and I really dive into those and try to understand the why behind that discharge, because if they've gone into the hospital and that placement provides treatment services, we're going to be asking them, you know, what can we do to help save this placement at least a time or two? Some placements will take kids back after they're hospitalized. And I'm not necessarily talking about like someone hurt their arm. I'm talking about, you know, mental health hospitalizations. So once they've gone into that a couple of times, we will talk with placements and consider moving them. But we really try to maintain placements whenever possible, as long as it's safe and healthy for that child. Placements that result in an emergency shelter placement, those always stay open on our caseload, because those are considered temporary placements. So while they're also like great safe options for our kids, we are actively keeping that open so that we can get them into a less restrictive environment. And then I also just wanted to add that any emergency removal resulting in a sibling group being separated will also be kept open in order to attempt to reunify those siblings when that's safe and possible. So that's something that stays on that caseload, especially when it comes through DFPS. If we're not able to maintain that sibling group, we will be keeping it open. For our non-emergency discharges, we have a couple of different options. Our 14-day discharge and 30-day discharge are probably our most common discharges that we see. 14 days are accompanied by a therapist letter, and that therapist is just stating, you know, a supportive reason of why we need to move more quickly than a 30-day discharge. We see these a lot with our congregate care options, our facilities, GROs, RTCs. And with each of these types of discharge, we do request that a DMS staffing be held, and that stands for disruption mitigation staffing. And this is a part where we love to have y'all whenever you're able to attend, because what we do is we come together as a team and we talk about what this kid needs. So that's going to include our intake team, an intake specialist who's assigned, permanency specialists, sometimes the permanency supervisors, that placement, and then of course our lovely CASA members if y'all are able to join. And we talk about what that kid needs, and the goal is to potentially see if we can save the placement. If we can't, we talk about what's next. What do we need to do to find stability for this kid? And then, we take that with us. Our intake specialist takes that along with us. And we consider that for our next placement. These other requests, licensure and adoption, those kind of go into a little bit of what Miss Melinda was talking about. Whenever a family becomes licensed as a foster parent to care for their kinship kiddos, we just go through, we love to see those requests. They're super exciting. And we just make sure everything looks good and that payment can start. Supervised independent living, also known as SIL, those placements are for kiddos who have aged out. Maybe they've turned 18 and they decided to continue on into extended care. And these kids are going to be flourishing into their adulthood, but they're going to have a little bit more support. So we love to see those as well. Two other searches that we are working on. I know I touched on the separated sibling a little bit, but a less restrictive facility step down search is what we do when we see kids who have been in a facility such as a GRO or an RTC for a while, and maybe they're showing stability. So when we see a kid who's been placed in a therapeutic restrictive setting and they're doing well, we start asking the team and wondering, hey, is this something that we could consider moving a kiddo down on? Can we look into maybe a GRO if they're in an RTC? Can we look at therapeutic foster homes? Can we look at regular foster homes? So those are questions that we're working towards, and we're definitely trying to see if we can move those children down into less restrictive placements while we either explore PMC or returning home or anything like that. The other thing I wanted to add was that intake specialists do not maintain a caseload in the same way that our permanency specialists do. Now, we definitely have youth who we've all worked on a couple of times, and we've located placements for them many, many times. But what I'm saying here is that when a child is placed in a placement, our intake specialist closes that out. So they're not going to be primary on any kind of placement searches. Of course, with the exceptions being they need to continue searching for a sibling group or they're in a shelter or something like that. So it's an option, but we traditionally do not maintain a caseload. Okay, this is an example of our broadcast. This is what we're sending out to providers whenever we're initiating a placement search for kids. As you can kind of see here, it's pretty self-explanatory. I also want to add this is a clip art image. So I'm not showing any children that we're currently working on in case this is recorded. So it's a clip art. But it's indicative of what we're looking for. A happy smiling photo, which I know sometimes we don't want to send like a mugshot here. That's not what we're looking for. But it has some demographic information, but it's what I wanted to highlight here is the interest and personality section and the behavior concerns. This is something that we pull from the common application and through talking through, with the caseworkers and everything. But what we're really trying to do here is be informative, strengths-based, perspective, trauma-informed. We want to highlight what's great about this child because every child in care has been through so much trauma. There's a list of all the things we could talk about that aren't working. But what are they passionate about? What is their favorite food? What kind of things do they care about? What makes them unique? And then, of course, like I said, when we're talking about the behavior concerns, we're wanting to use a strengths-based perspective. And there will be more information on the common application. But we also want to be transparent. So when our intake specialists are making these, we're not completely sugarcoating everything. We are being transparent about the things that these children are going through, but we're also trying to be as positive about it as possible. Like I said, all of that comes from the common application, mental health records, and medical records. A lot of it can also come from like the CANs or the psychological. Also wanted to kind of talk about our relationship with our providers here. Like I said in the beginning, this is sent out via email, but we always follow up with phone calls. So a lot of the times when we're assigned a youth and we're looking at them and we're reading about them, we're also thinking about where they could go, and where they will feel loved and where they will connect, because that's a really important part of what we do too. So we're always following up with phone calls and giving more information if necessary, making sure they've received this, but just adding that personal touch as well.
Question.
Yeah.
On that disruption meeting, and typically who sends out that notice? Is that the worker? Because you said if CASA is available.
Sure.
Sometimes, unfortunately, we're not, because we weren't quite aware of it, early enough. So who actually sends that notice out?
So that's actually, that's a really good question, and I meant to cover that. So I'm glad that you asked. But it's set up by our care coordination team, and they send out that invite and they coordinate times together. So I believe that the permanency specialist would be able to add you in at that time. And then y'all can also coordinate around if you're available, and kind of make sure everybody's schedules line up.
And then another thing we've been invited to lately is I believe it's called a kinship session to try to talk to a potential placement. Those are kind of new. The same thing. Is that the same group that sends those out?
It's called a kinship session.
No.
It's the Kinship funders.
Yes.
Kinship does normally participate in those as well.
Okay, and so who sends those notices out? On a new text, so we receive, we're appointing, we're receiving, and then usually the supervisors will receive.
It comes from DFPS, or the potential, to basically educate a potential kinship placement. But it's good to attend.
And my last question for you, you said that you're always looking for those siblings to get them reunited. You always have that, you leave that placement open.
Mhm.
You sounded like it was open-ended. We've been told, like, you guys keep a call record of that. And so it's running all the time. Is that what you're telling us?
For the separated sibling searches, when it's safe and possible for us to reunify siblings, we do keep an intake specialist assigned, and that is part of their responsibility. We log the calls that we talk to in a system. I believe that can be requested, but it's not something that we do. I think it's through Permanency. But what I will say on that, not to get too far off topic, but just to kind of let you know that, like with Rider 45, we have certain limitations in terms of like reaching out to providers more than once. And there's some loopholes and there's some things that we can do to go around it, but we have some criteria that we're not able to reach out to, depending on what that provider responds at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, so we do.
If you reached out to the provider, they say, we don't have anything. Do they go off the list and y'all can't contact them?
Not entirely. If they say that we're unable to house this child because they are sexually aggressive, because we're not licensed for their age or their gender, that's different. But if capacity is the reason why, that changes on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. So capacity is something that we will wait and then reach back out on.
That was my last question for you. I just got one from Ms. Melinda. When you said that kinship referral, is that again coming from at time of removal from DFPS, or you're waiting till it goes to the permanency unit before you're contacted to contact one of our caregivers?
So it's supposed to come from investigation. So from the time they place the child in the home, whether Permanency, Invest, whoever the primary worker is that's working with the family, should send that referral within 48 hours of placement.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so how does intake locate placement? I don't know if y'all are familiar, but we have a joint operation manual that matches each region across the state. And one of the things in that JOM is talking about community-based care guidelines, which I'm sure y'all have all touched on and are pretty familiar with. So some of the main things that come from that guideline is, one, placing children within their region of removal and in least restrictive environments possible. Now, let me preface that by saying on the next slide, I don't have very many more, I promise I'm almost done. But we'll talk about capacity issues. But just here I will say that placement options in Region 4 are pretty limited, especially when we're looking at sibling groups, teens, and kiddos that are beyond a basic level of care. And if you aren't familiar, a basic level of care is a child who has essentially no behaviors, that they are very baseline. They're very basic. So that is kind of what our capacity looks like in Region 4. So restriction wise, the first placement that we're going to look for is a child placing agency, CPA. Those are who license our foster homes and our therapeutic foster homes. We do not contact that foster home directly. We contact that agency. That agency reviews that broadcast, that packet, asks us questions, and then they reach out to potential families. And then those potential families communicate through the CPA. So intake is never calling foster homes. The second is a general residential operation. It is a congregate care setting. It's a facility. And then residential treatment center, RTC, is a more restrictive congregate care setting. Both of those generally offer treatment services, but not always. And then of course I have the emergency shelter here as well, because again, that's never our goal, but it is sometimes an option and it is temporary. Okay, let's see. Oh, I was right. It's the next slide. Capacity statistics in Region 4. This might have changed a teensy tiny bit. It feels like it's changed a lot more, but we've been busy. Since November 1st, 2023, we've worked about 2,591 placement requests. Current capacity in Region 4 is at 92%. So that 8% that we have available is kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Those are legal risk homes, adoption only homes. They want kiddos who are not school aged, so below 4 or 5, newborn maybe. And then again, that basic level of care. So how many kids are we removing at the age of 6, 7 years old from a incredibly abusive or environment that's not suitable for them, with no trauma, with no behaviors? They're not reacting to that. So it is kind of hard to locate that, but that's kind of what our capacity looks like in Region 4. So when we're placing children outside of Region 4, and y'all are seeing that, especially being from Smith County, just so that you all kind of know why we may be looking in the other directions, is because there just might not be any options. But rest assured, our intake team starts in Region 4 every single time, and we start at CPAs every single time, and we move up in restriction level, because again, it can change hourly. And again, those relationships come into play, because we may call and they don't have any options, but they may say, well, you know what, Christine, call me back next week, because we might be having somebody move home and we might be able to make this work. So that's something that we're always considering as well. Sibling group reunification is sometimes possible outside of region. So if we have 2, 3 siblings, we might not be able to place them together in Region 4, but we could in another area. So we'll consider that as well. And then oftentimes treatment facilities like GROs, RTCs, those are located outside of region. We have a couple and it's getting better, but our capacity just really isn't there to support the entirety of our kids. Really quick, I wanted to touch on another part of placing kids outside of region. What we do when that happens is submit an SSCC request. So as you can see, these here are listed, the SSCCs who are privatized. So like Region 4, 4Kids4Families, we're privatized under the community-based care model. And so, like I said, the goal is to place children inside our region of origin. So anytime we need to place a child in an area that is not Region 4 and they're private, we'll be reaching out to them basically with a proposal and letting them know why we need to place in their region. And then they look at that and approve that. They don't always approve it, but of course they try to when it is possible. Luckily, that's not my responsibility. So Miss Melissa often looks at that whenever people are requesting to place in Region 4. And I know there's a ton of things that you look at and consider, but the goal is ultimately the best interest of the child. So whenever that's possible, it's something that we do. But if y'all are, working with us and there is a mention of an SSCC request being denied, that's what they're talking about. Is that the end? I like this. Yeah. That's all.
Thank you, Emily. You all have any further questions on her section here or online? All right, we have one more speaker. Kayla Bailey is going to be going over permanency.
Hello. So I don't have a cool little fancy PowerPoint to go along with it, so y'all just give me. So with permanency, I know some of y'all in here, but not everybody. So we are the primary case holders of cases majority of the time. We are the SSCC 4Kids4Families that took over for conservatorship under DFPS in Region 4. You are going to see us at court. We hold the cases. We work with families, parents, kinship, the children on getting to permanency. So whether that's reunification, which that's always the goal, or if we have to look at a different direction because of safety concerns or just needs of the family. Within permanency, we do have a couple of unique positions, such as family collaboration, which is able to go in to help kinship, to help parents with hands-on parenting. We also hold the permanency conferences and family group conferences. So Family Collab, if you're seeing them, that's who's holding all of those meetings. But they also could be going into the house to help those families with hands-on parenting and just kind of whatever they need. If we need to go help clean a house, if we need to just go in to just say, hey, talk to them, see what's going on, how can we help you in whatever way? It's pretty much what we do on that side. Does anybody have any questions? Because permanency we've got a whole umbrella here. It covers a lot. So any questions just in general for permanency?
Do you start getting involved?
So the moment that a removal takes place, we start getting involved. So we'll start with what we call an ICM, which is an initial, which one is that? The initial coordination meeting. There you go. So we have that meeting between if it's either family-based safety services or investigations, to just kind of get an idea of what's going on with this family. We receive all the removal affidavits, and then you hold the adversary and the case is transferred over to the permanency side. Now, depending on what county you're in will depend on your leadership. So you'll have your worker, your supervisor, and then your regional manager. So there's 4 of us, and we just kind of split up the region. Any other questions?
Nothing online yet.
Courtney, would you like to add anything that I may have missed? My cool PowerPoint.
Do you help the family with licensing?
The placement.
Right.
So we do work hand in hand with kinship to try to get them licensed. They'll also work with the CPA, so we'll talk to them as well. If we are unable to locate at the initial removal any relatives, permanency will continue efforts to locate relatives to try to get the children placed in the home as well.
We don't license homes now, like DFTS used to license homes. As 4Kids4Families, we do not do that at this point. We will give them a list of resources for surrounding child placing agencies, and those families will go to those agencies to go through licensing process.
Any other questions?
On average, how many cases do permanency specialists carry?
So we do have some areas that have less and then some that more. We do try to stick at about 17, which is the normal caseload. But some areas may have fewer than that, just depending on the removals.
So there's currently a federal caseload standard at this point due to the lawsuit. So that is 17 substages. So that's 17 unique children. So it's not around cases, it's around those unique children. But our goal is to keep caseworkers 12 and under because we feel like they can do better casework and true social work at that point. But obviously that's harder in some areas and with retention.
Kayla, just for Smith County purposes, can you tell how many permanency workers you have right now, supervisors in Smith County, so they can kind of get an idea?
Yeah. So with Smith County, we have 3 units. We have 3 supervisors, Adam Tier, Ayana Sepulveda, and Yvonne James. Under them, they all have 7 permanency workers. one, what we call a, CSS or a client service specialist, those help with transportation, and then one admin.
Sometimes we, forget that everybody's carrying a large caseload.
Any other questions?
What about Wood County?
Wood County. So they have one regional manager, one supervisor, and 7 permanency specialists. And then they'll also have a client service specialist to help with transportation and admin to help out.
So we have a family that's going through the licensing process. So she's talked to us, the Kinship has talked to us about the name. So the people that she's talking to are people that are with you guys, is that right? That are kind of walking them through like, okay, these are the things you have to do.
Is she currently a kinship placement or is she getting licensed to
She's
foster?
currently a Kinship placement. She's trying to get PMC, so she has to get licensing. Am I saying that right?
PCA. With PCA.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So she will most likely have a kinship worker as well as working with a child placing agency to get licensed to
Okay.
do that PCA.
Okay,
And then she'll have her primary permanency specialist.
okay.
Yes.
All the letters kind of mixed together and
Yes, very much.
Would you be able to repeat the Van Zandt County statistics on like y'all staffing? Sorry to make you repeat that, but if you know it, like how many, you just did it for Smith County, how many supervisors are?
Wait, Lauren.
Van Zandt County is, you've got your regional manager that covers multiple different counties, and then you've got one supervisor over Van Zandt, and they have 7 workers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Each of those 7 workers, they have 12 kids each, is that?
They have anywhere,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think our highest right now that we have someone that's holding 24, and then we've got the graduated caseloads. But yes, they've got anywhere from max is supposed to be around 17, but those caseloads do range, yeah.
And it really just depends on the amount of removals that are coming out of that county, retention. And with Smith County, we sometimes have some workers coming in to help out as well.
So retention, what does that mean?
So workers that may leave for whatever reason, and we are hiring again. So while workers are in training, they cannot hold any type of primary case. They just go through the training to learn the position and or at least the basis of the position, because they're not going to learn everything within the training. And then they'll start holding cases once their case is assignable.
Is retention level satisfactory these days or a challenge?
Really need a PowerPoint.
Our overall retention is like, hi, I'm Courtney Thigpen, I'm the director of film. So our retention level at this point is good overall. I will tell you where we're struggling is those first year staff. We lost a lot of our first year staff last year, but we retained, I don't know the exact numbers, so I don't want to tell you off the top of my head, but it's higher than the state's average for our tenured staff. So anybody 2 years and up, which is 2 years, so we're calling tenured now in this field. And I know you guys can relate to that, but we retained those staff well. Those new staff in that 1 year mark, we lost most of our 1 year staffers last year.
It's hard work.
It's
And while Kayla, I bring that up, if we are working as a team, we try to, as supervisor, Ms. Lena's over there too, is encourage our volunteers is that they have multiple cases, they have multiple counties, they can't always answer, a text or a call, or call, they try and so we try and work with them for everyone to all communicate and all work together because we figure it's overwhelming.
It's much appreciated. Yeah, most definitely. And it's much appreciated. It works better if we all work as a team. We're not always going to agree on something. We're not always going to be on the same side of the fence, but just working together and having that open communication on what the disagreement is, what the concerns are, is going to help the family overall, not just the child, but the family as well.
So are you part of 4Kids4Families, or is this totally separate?
Yeah, you mean permanency?
Yes.
Yes, permanency is under 4Kids4Families. So under DFPS, it would have been conservatorship. And when 4Kids4Families took over, it transitioned over to permanency. So permanency is going to be the primary holders of the case. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Who does the training for the newly hired specialists?
So we do have a training department that does that, but as far as mentors, it is our primary workers who are going out in the field that they shadow side by side. They're helping them throughout their whole training. They have one mentor and that's who they follow and go through. Any other questions?
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Is there a way to get emails when you kind of transition into different programs? You know, because we kind of got blindsided a little bit when they said, you know, we're in Kinship now, we're moving into this part, and we're clueless that was happening.
Are you speaking of like the Kinship placement got licensed and now they're moving over to the adoptions unit?
No, they're going into licensing.
Okay, so they're just working Kinship and then now they're working into being a licensed home.
And they didn't even know they were in Kinship.
Okay, yes, so that is communication and that's the big importance of it. It's just having communication with what's going on in that case, with everybody as a whole. To let them know like, hey, this home is now licensed and this is what the goal is for this case and moving forward. So yes.
Your primary worker will remain the same throughout the case. So your permanency worker is the worker for the child and family, not for the placement home, but the child and family, and they will remain the same caseworker throughout unless you have, if your caseworker leaves and we replace that caseworker, that permanency worker stays with the case. All of the other workers are what we call secondary support workers. So they are assigned to the case in a secondary capacity to help either as kinship or whatever the case may be. Though your primary point of contact will still remain that permanency worker. But if your family doesn't know, they're saying the placement doesn't know who their kinship worker is, or they didn't know that they were in kinship.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the terminology was just a lot.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a lot when all that's going on, and I think she
lot of
was
people.
just, yeah, and because when we first came on, she was like, no more people, you know, and so now that's all fine, but there's just so many different people, and I think she just was overwhelmed, which I'm sure she's not alone in that instance, but so I think she was just like, I guess I'm kinship, I'm kin, you know, so that kind of, all the terminology is overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that can take a while to get used to. You may have someone who, like me, doesn't realize that they're speaking an acronym sometimes. And so just stopping and saying, hey, what does that mean? So that's just going to be a big part of the communication, especially whenever we have a brand new case, brand new removal. These families have never been through this process before, what that's going to look like for them on the kinship side, as well as for the children and the parents.
Should we as CASA, I'm sorry, we have so many questions.
No, y'all are fine.
Should we as CASA know who our permanency person is?
Yes.
Yes.
You already know who yours is, Ms. Dunn. It's Kelly Minter.
Oh, she's our permanency person?
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what she was. I'm sorry. You're right. I know who she is. I have a great relationship with her. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Any other questions? All righty.
I will say, maybe just use this as an opportunity, and it can be for you or any of the 4Kids staff here. What are some things coming from y'all's end that y'all would like CASA to know or wish we knew, you know, more at the surface?
I think one of our biggest struggles across the board is if you've been doing this for a minute, we used to have a ton of placement options. We used to, every time we sent in a request for placement, you would get 3 or 4 to pick from. And that's not the reality we're living in now. So when only one placement option is presented to the team as a whole, the legal team as a whole, which includes CASA, and there's only one option, it seems like we're being met with more frustration around that because they think that we're withholding options or we're not looking hard enough or whatever the case may be. But licensing hasn't allowed for that environment anymore. So many facilities have been shut down. So many foster homes have been shut down that to find an option is a good day. So that's one thing, and her stats on showing what Region 4 has out there and available, and how that search goes and stretches out throughout all of Texas, is, I feel like, really important for us to all remember, because I feel like there's a lot of frustration around what's available.
Courtney, could you touch on that a minute? Is y'all have a time frame I mean, when you send us an email and say, hey, I found a placement, I'm asking for the team to answer. And then we get sporadic answers or no answer, and I'm not talking, we know attorneys do it too. And, we can only have the access to the attorney line mainly, so I can text and say, answer your email. Because we know, can you explain, there is a timeline and you could lose that because other people are trying to get that placement as well. You're not trying to rush us and.
Absolutely. We are challenging everybody else in the state of Texas for that bed. I mean, everybody is trying to get a bed. So if they said, hey, you know, yes, this is an option for this child, they may have said that at the same time for 3 different kiddos. Whoever they get back with a yes with is who's going to get that bed. So if we're waiting on the legal party to say yes for 3 days, we'll most likely lose that bed. And then we're back to square one, trying to find an option.
Great information, thank you.
Especially if it's a foster home.
There you go.